tension's raised a little high. Heat is getting a little hotter, so guys getting a little more agitated. But it ain't that deep. We squashed it.
Hello and welcome to Big Dash Knows. Big Dash knows what? New York Giants football. Let's go. OTA 6. Today was a day. We got our first brawl in practice. OTAs. There's a brawl in OTAs. What are we doing, New York Giants? I love the energy. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but let's just say this. A few OTAs ago, they said it was an action-packed OTA. I believe that was OTA 4. Action-packed. Today was action-packed as well. There was action on the field. There was action off the field, but really like on the field. But everything wasn't just football related. But guess what? The defensive line got into it with the offensive line. I should say the defensive front got into it with the offensive line. And some punches were thrown. But before we get into that, let's talk about practice. Let's talk about some of the important things that happened during OTA 6. So first off, just want to start off with some of the news from today. What was it? It was CBS Sports has Russell Wilson and Malik Neighbors ranked 7th as the best quarterback wide receiver duo going into the 2025 season. And then also, who is it? Also, PFF has Javon Holland ranked as their 10th best safety in the league. So some accolades being provided to some players for the New York Giants. You love to hear it. So today started off with the coordinator speaking. So you had this special teams coordinator, offensive coordinator Kafka, defensive coordinator Bowen. So we finally get a chance to hear these guys speak. So I'm just going to start off. I'm going in order of when these guys were at the podium. First guy up the bat was Coach Jabril. And just some notes. And I got my handy dandy notebook. You see it. I got 2 pages of notes. Usually I only had like 1 page of notes. Today was, again, action packed. So let's get into it. So some of the comments or some of the quotes from Coach Jabril was he did not close the door on a kicker competition. But he also said that last year Gano finished strong, and that going into the 17th season, Gano looks back to form. So that's cool. The other kicker on the list is McAtemi. He said he will get a chance to compete. So again, what are we talking about here? To me, it seems like, and again, I have a lot of reservations when it comes to Graham Gano and in his 17th year, and can he stay healthy, and what's the plan going to be if he gets hurt? What are we going to do? We still have McAtemi. We have not brought in another kicker, as far as the competition goes. But to me, it seems like they're going to run out there with Gano again and pretty much till the wheels fall off. That's what I'm getting from that, because I don't think if Gano is healthy that McAtemi can actually beat him out. So we'll see what happens with that. Next, he spoke highly about Amir Smith-Marset being a returner. He said he takes care of the ball. They rely on him, and he can score. So we saw that. He had the big return, kickoff return in the Colts game. So, he's happy with Smith-Marset. Smith-Marset has a lot of trust. And like I said, when you're taking care of the ball and you also can be productive and you can possibly take the ball to the house, you know what? That's a good recipe for a good returner. So shout out to the Jersey natives, Smith-Marset. He also said, and I thought it was a funny comment, he says Holland has shown that he can be a fill-in in special teams. Now, Javon Holland, I understand, has that versatility, can do some things, is athletic, got some wiggle to him, but that's a last resort for me. We got enough wide receivers. We got enough cornerbacks on the team that could possibly do that job. For me, I'm not thinking about putting Javon Holland back there on kick return, even if it is in a pinch. I don't want to be in that pinch. I don't want to be in one of those situations. So we'll see what happens, with that. Next, he said he talked about the Scottish Hammer. Said that Gillen had a solid season last year, especially when it comes to pinning people down in the 10-yard line, especially at MetLife, especially in a windy environment. So nothing but praises when it comes to the Scottish Hammer. And then he also said, and I'll end the quote here, he's excited with the addition of Chris Board, the guy that we picked up from the Ravens. Again, the guy had a special teams background with the Ravens. He comes here. They're excited about him. Said he's a tone setter when it comes to being on special teams. So that was Coach Jabril. Next, we had Kafka. Kafka was at the podium. Some of the quotes that I have from Kafka are this. He says, he knew Dart was the guy relatively early. So, yeah, they were asking about Dart and how he felt about Dart. And he said it. He said that they pretty much had him as the guy, relatively early. So I don't know what exactly that means. I don't know if they're saying that all these other meetings and stuff like that were a facade. But he said that they knew relatively early that Dart was going to be their guy. He said that he does have a development plan for Dart as well. He said all the QBs are learning from each other. Guys are leaning on DeVito, surprisingly, but it makes sense because he's been there the longest. So a lot of the offense and stuff like that, some of these guys are leaning, even the veterans are leaning on DeVito, to help them out. But again, they said that everybody's learning from everybody. Said when it comes to Russell Wilson, he sees the leadership in Russ. He said he has the command and how the players respect him. He loves his competitiveness, and his demeanor is invaluable, so his demeanor is valuable. So we already know Russ. Some people call him corny. I considered him corny for a certain part of time because I didn't know him. This is for me on the outside looking in. Now that I have a more in-depth look, or I guess behind the scenes look at Russell Wilson and how the team actually is responding to him. Like to have him in the building, good leadership. We always knew he had some good leadership, but we also heard that there were issues as far as teammates in the locker room. And so far, so good for Russell Wilson. I haven't heard anything about none of the bad stuff that you might have heard that happened in Denver and stuff like that when it comes to Russell Wilson. So happy to hear about that. He also said that Russ would be able to challenge him in certain situations, saying his experience in games and experience as a professional, as a starter, can help Kafka in certain situations. If he's seeing things a certain way and it might be different from the way the coordinator's seeing it, those guys can have those discussions. So that's good to know. You have an offensive coordinator, willing to take, to listen to what his experienced quarterback is seeing out there as well. So love to hear things like that. He did not confirm if he was calling plays or not. But he did say that he would do anything that, Brian Dable asked him to do. He's going to do that. So I'm going to end that quote with Kafka on those words. And then we're going to move on to Bowen. So, and Bowen had a couple of jewels in here that I liked a lot. I even reposted one of the tweets that I saw from, I believe it was Dunleavy. But we know what the chest is now. Remember we're talking about the treasure chest, the turnover chest, and stuff like that. That we saw in the OTAs. Like I said, the treasure box. Well, it all stems from Shane Bowen's son, I guess, a little league team being called the Pirates, and now we have a treasure chest. And every time we get an interception, it's like the Pirates taking the treasure chest, and it's a whole analogy as far as the New York Giants defense being pirates, steal the ball, ransacking defense, all this stuff, whatever Pirates are doing. And I thought it was funny too, because you know what Pirates do? Pirates also fight, and we end up having a fight at the end of this practice. But yeah, so that's the whole theme now for the New York Giants defense is be a pirate. That's what he said. He told these guys, be a pirate. So whatever that entails, that's the mentality for the New York Giants defense right now. At least the secondary is be a pirate, take the ball away, do some things with it. Next thing I have is, so he says, gotta make sure to maximize the skill set of the players. Must evolve and can't stay the same. I retweeted that because what have I been saying for the longest? Somehow Bowen needs to create a system that best fits the skill set of his players. That's the one thing that I've been saying when it comes to Shane Bowen. You can't do what you did in Tennessee with the players that you have here. The roster is not set up the same. I'm glad he said it. I'm glad he is aware of it. But again, that's something that we need to see. You need to create a scheme that best fits the skill set of the players. So I'm glad he actually said that out loud. And they also asked him if he feels any pressure. And he says he's pretty much just focusing on getting these players, to play to the best of their ability and to win. Again, for me, there's a translation there. Of course, he's hearing the outside noise. Of course, he knows he needs to be successful. Not saying that they're threatening him, with taking his job away from him, but the writing is on the wall. When you have the roster on paper, the way that it looks, there's no reason why you should not be successful unless the scheme is not working or the players are just trash. And to me, I don't think the players are trash. The scheme got to be able to work. That's my opinion on that. He also talked about the additions of Paulson and Debo. Excited about that, and also excited about Javon Holland and in a second year with Tyler Newman. He also talked about Dane Belton improving. And that's one thing that a lot of people are saying, especially early on in the OTAs. The guys are getting interceptions. He ended up getting an interception today as well. So I believe he has 3 interceptions in 6 OTAs. So that's fantastic right now. And that's what you want to happen. I just did the video yesterday about, players that you can see being New York Giants beyond 2026, whose contracts are up in 2026 or are playing in a contract year. And Dane Belton was one of those guys on the list as a guy that is quality, depth, solid. He's not your starter. But, things don't go downhill when you put him in there as a substitute. He's a guy that can actually make plays. And, again, we've seen it in OTAs already when it comes to Dane Belton. He also talked about the Tibbs, Byrne, and Carter effect. He says we pretty much got 3 outside linebackers or 3 edges, going for 2 spots. But he also talked about the versatility of Carter and how the main thing is getting your best 11 guys on the field. Now, we've been also talking about that on this channel about obviously Carter has the experience of being an off-ball linebacker at Penn State and did that at a high level, at a very high level. So to me, Tibbs is not an off-ball linebacker. Burns is not an off-ball linebacker. The only guy that's going to make that move, in my opinion, to be a stack linebacker, off-ball linebacker on certain plays, and again, he's a defensive weapon, is Carter. That's it. And you can't tell me you got your best 11 players on the field if Tibbs is not on the field. Tibbs is part of the best 11 that we put out there. And again, I hope that they can get something or divide scheme that'll work for that. And then Brandon Brown also talked about that later on, and I'll get to his quotes as well. After that, said he was encouraged by the defensive line and the versatility of the defensive line. And then talking about that, and I didn't go back in the beginning, I didn't talk about the injuries, right? So some of the injuries we got right now, we had Darius Alexander being held out of practice on the sideline, no helmet, but they're not disclosing what's going on with Darius Alexander. It's a mystery right now. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't believe there's a history of injuries really in college as well that would be holding them out. He was at the combine, passed all those reports, so I'm curious to see what's going on with that. But we have not seen Darius Alexander in the helmet since, OTAs have begun. So we'll see what happens. That Neighbors also did not participate because of the toe. They got him on load management. Andrew Thomas is another guy that did not participate, but was there at practice. John Runyon is the same, and I believe Greg Van Roten did not practice today either, but that might be load management for him as well. So a lot of guys, again, perfect attendance, but not everybody practicing. Let's see what else we got going on. So the other thing is this. They talked about Tay Banks. He said that he's noticed that Tay Banks is locked in. That was his words, locked in. He's asking more questions during film review. He's asking more questions during the install, and he's showing a new level of, not interest is a bad word to say because of course these guys are interested in football, but he's showing another level of hunger. That's the best way to put it. Another level of hunger is being shown from Tay Banks, and you love to hear that. Now I will say this too though. One of the practice notes, as far as the first team cornerbacks today, it was Paulson Adebo and Cordell Flott running with the ones. So, take that with a grain of salt if you want. I think it's pretty much eye-opening. But again, that's going to be the quotes that I have from the coordinators. Let's start getting into this practice again, right? So, Dable was at the podium today also. Again, talked about the full attendance, but not everybody was practicing. Just went over that. He did talk about Dart very quickly. Says Dart is picking things up and he's done a nice job. And he said it's good to have vet quarterbacks to help the young guys. Good chemistry in the quarterback room. So that's all I got from Dable, right? Now let's talk about practice notes. Again, First corners out there were Debo and Cordell Flott, and Phillips, of course, in the slot spot. It says Banks was not out there with the ones early. Also, in the news was Neal was working with the ones today at left guard. Kubas was at right guard. So we have not entirely new lineup, but we did have some changes to the lineup this week. Again, James Hudson is the left tackle with Andrew Thomas being out. Then we saw Evan Neal at left guard, JMS at center, Jake Kubas at right guard, and Jermaine Illuminor at the right tackle spot. So those 2 guard spots are interchangeable right now. Guys are getting their reps, getting their work in. They did say that Dart was running with the 2s instead of the 3s in OTAs today. Jameis Winston was running with the 3s, and then also that Dart got at least 1 snap with the ones today in early on in 7-on-7s. That was pretty good. But they did also say as soon as Winston's first rep in 7-on-7 was a deep touchdown pass to Darius Slayton. So I did notice that and wanted to talk about that really quickly. Just because the quarterback is set to play with the 1s or playing with the 2s or 3s, you're looking at the wide receivers, and there's really no, I guess, order when it comes, because you had Winston as the 3rd quarterback, but he's throwing to Darius Slayton. We saw some reps with Russell Wilson throwing to Hyatt, but we already know Hyatt's getting more reps because Neighbors is not on the field dealing with his load management and stuff like that. So can't say that we can write everything down and say that this is definite as far as who's going to be the quarterback 2, who's going to be the quarterback 3, because these guys are being rotated around, but also the wide receivers. There's no true order to the wide receivers, and Darius Slayton, to many people's, understanding, is the wide receiver 2. All right, so some of the stats from 7-on-7. During the first part of 7-on-7, Wilson went 2 for 4. Dart went 2 for 3. Winston went 2 for 3 with 1 touchdown. Again, that was a touchdown to Darius Slayton. And then DeVito went 0 for 2. Then when they switched to 11-on-11s, this is where it got a little bit crazy. And this is where the defense started to step up. This is where those interceptions happened. So Dart went 1 for 4, 2 pass breakups and an interception on the first part of the 11-on-11s. Abdul Carter got a would-be sack on Jameis Winston during a rollout. Wilson also got a touchdown to Slayton, deep pass. So again, we got 2 bombs to Slayton, 1 from Winston, one from Russell Wilson. So that's fantastic. And then Dane Belton got his interception off of Wilson, jumped the route again. So normally when I talk about Dane Belton, we talk about him being in the right place at the right time. Maybe it's an overthrow, maybe it's a tip pass, and then he took advantage of the opportunity. 2 of the 3 interceptions that have been explained in OTAs so far for Belton is him jumping a route, reading the quarterback, making a play, trusting himself, and that's a different level of growth. That's not just being in the right place in the right time. That's knowing what's going on, identifying, maybe the passing schemes or the routes and making a play. So that's fantastic to me to hear this news about Dane Belton. Again, a guy that's on a contract year, looking for his next contract. If he can make plays like that, the New York Giants definitely will have him, on their short list of guys that they want to extend, for the future for the New York Giants. What's it? The UDFA page, the safety page from Michigan got an interception on Dart from a popped up pass. And then again, we had the fight. We had the fight between Brian Burns and James Hudson. So I believe the way they explained it was that it was a little bit of a shoving match. James Hudson and Brian Burns took their helmets off and squared up. Team broke it up. Then I believe on the next play or the following plays, it was Thibodeau and Illuminor that got into it. James Hudson decided to come off the sideline, and I believe they said he tackled Tibbs. That caused Burns to jump back into it. So it ended up being a full-on rumble at OTA practice. And for some people, you hate to see it. For some people, you love the energy. Brian Burns was asked about it at the end of practice today, and he said, things got heated. The heat didn't help, but that is squashed right now. And that's the main thing. As long as they're able to move on and things are not lingering and you ain't got to worry about any kind of retaliation down the line, that's good. So if those things are true, that this really squashed, and fantastic. Things got heated. It's a physical sport, a violent sport, and sometimes things like that happen. Sometimes things like that need to happen to build some more chemistry. Again, you had the offensive line sticking up for the offensive line, and the defensive players picking up. Sticking up for the defensive players. Love to see it. Love to see it. Burns had Tibbs back. Hudson had Illuminor's back. Love to see it. As long as nobody's getting injured, I'm cool with that. But we got to be smarter. We really don't need to be squaring up. Grabbing the shoulder pads, grabbing collars, grabbing face masks. We can do all that, but let's not take the helmets off and square up. Because trust me, Brian Burns, I understand you're fantastic, but if an offensive lineman hits you, you might go to sleep. you might go to sleep. And the same thing goes for Hudson. If you get hit by an edge rusher, you might go to sleep too, and nobody wants it at the end of the day. So getting into some of these player quotes, and again, we're going to wrap this thing up. Some of the player quotes, we had Wan'Dale Robinson talking about Russell Wilson, and he said that when he first caught passes from Russell Wilson, he looked at Slayton and said, "This is better than we expected." Said he throws a very catchable ball, and he said also in some of the shorter routes, those balls come like pillows. So some people to say that's a shot because Daniel Jones was known for having one speed, and that was the fastball. Dodgeball Danny is one of the nicknames I saw somebody write down. But yeah, again, you have an experienced quarterback that knows how to layer his throws and throws a catchable ball, and the wide receivers seem to be happy with that. So I'm cool with that. And then when Burns was at the podium, he said, "This defense can be exotic," talking about with all the new additions. He says players need an edge, but it can't get in the way. So it's two different things. So he was talking about the added players to this roster, especially on the defensive side, and how because you have so many guys that can play so many positions, you can have exotic play calls. So what do you mean by exotic? Is it fancy blitz schemes? Is it stunts? Is it twists? Is it things like that? I'm thinking it's going to be all of that. Is it safety blitz, corner blitzes, stuff like that? When you say exotic, that's where my mind goes. So obviously you have a lot of versatility on the field when when it comes to this New York Giants roster on the defensive side. You got guys like Dexter that can play all across the line. You got fast edge rushers. You got good middle linebackers. You got a solid secondary, guys that have veteran experience, guys that have been able to take the ball away, guys that are still learning in Tay Banks and Tyler Nubin in their second year. Also, Phillips. So I'm happy to see that this team is excited about what could be coming up in the 2025 season, and the players know it, man. And that's the first thing. If the players recognize that in the locker room, hopefully it can transition to the field. And then, like I said, ended the practice abruptly. Brian Dable sent everybody, off the field. I understand it's a violent sport. I understand that sometimes things get heated, but you also ended practice early, so a lot of guys didn't get the reps that they needed. So like Brian Burns said, you can be physical. It's a violent sport, but you can't let it get in the way of the goal. And again, guys losing reps because practice, ended early. You can't have that. You can't have that. And then the last guy was Brandon Brown, assistant GM, was at the podium today. And he pretty much said that when talking about Carter, he's saying that the Carter can affect the quarterback from multiple positions. Again, he can be stacked, he can be on the edge, he can be off ball. His versatility is an asset for the New York Giants. Again, being able to be moved around. Again, defensive weapon. That's what we call an Abdul Carter. And Brandon Brown pretty much is just saying that everything that he can do benefits the New York Giants. When you look at this roster, when you look at how you're going to get all three guys on the field, when I talk about Burns, Tibbs, and Carter, is because of the versatility of Carter makes that even more possible. It makes it make sense at the end of the day. And then he also talked about the process of drafting players, and you got to make sure that you follow the process all the way through. And again, Brandon Brown was one of those guys that was at the Colorado Pro Days, Colorado practices, along with other, ccolleges. And again, they did their due diligence, but at the end, we saw things fall apart when it was, scouting of Shedeur Sanders. And then we end up with Jackson Dart. But again, you have to follow the process all the way through, because if they would have been happy with what they saw and not had been as thorough, who knows what would have been the situation when it came to the draft. But this was a packed video, way longer than I normally do these videos. I like to try to keep them in the 10 to 15 minute range. But again, a lot of things happened today in OTA 6. But with that being said, I want to thank everybody for vibing with me. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And from one Giants fan to another, this is Big Dash Knows, Big Blue Nation. Let's go.